Hey guys, welcome back to another video here on the channel. This week Subaru sent me the 2024 Crosstrek Sport to test and review for you guys. And if you follow the channel, then you'll know this is actually not the first Crosstrek Sport I've had from Subaru. Not exactly sure why they sent me the exact same trim level in a different exterior color. But hey, this gives me a chance to do a side-by-side comparison that I was not able to do when I had the blue one just a few months ago. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the all-new 2024 Hyundai Kona SEL Convenience and the Crosstrek Sport, see what each one has to offer for the low $30,000 price point. As we know, the Kona comes in both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. This one is an all-wheel drive SEL Convenience, and the Subaru Crosstrek comes standard with their symmetrical all-wheel drive system. So this is equal in terms of pricing, features, and rough comparison and trim level. And unfortunately, this is not going to be a in-depth, detailed, feature comparison where I go through all of the missing features and options between these two models. This is going to be more of a driving impressions, interior review, touching on some of the key elements that I like and dislike between each of these two models, because they certainly do have a lot of big differences and some strong suits in the case of either one. But there's certainly going to be some people that will be gravitated towards or choose the Crosstrek over that of the Kona, and vice versa, depending on your overall goal and wants and needs inside of a subcompact SUV. So with all that information in mind, let's not waste more time. Take a look at each of these two vehicles side by side and tell you about my overall impressions. So quickly before we get into this video, I do want to go ahead and show you guys the exact window stickers for either of these two vehicles in front of me. The 2024 Crosstrek Sport on my left is finished in the Alpine green exterior with the unique sport exterior and interior styling, mainly those gold accents that you'll see throughout the vehicle itself. Now this one does have the single optional package, which includes the power sunroof, the rear cross traffic and blind spot detection, as well as the power driver seat for about $1,900 if I do believe. And that brings the total MSRP to just around the $32,000 price point, including destination. Now on my right, I have a Kona finished in the Abyss black exterior with the gray cloth interior. This one is an all-wheel drive SEL Convenience package and does have a few additional accessories on it, which does add to the overall price point. But this one comes in right around the $31,000 price point. So there is going to be a little bit of a price differential between each of these two vehicles, but this is about as close as you will get in comparison to the features, options, and the core vehicle underneath the skin. Now, as we know, the Subaru Crosstrek Sport is the first trim level to get the larger 2.5 liter boxer 4-cylinder motor with about 182 horsepower and similar amounts of torque. This is paired to a CVT transmission, of course, in all-wheel drive. And the SEL Convenience Kona is actually the highest trim level in the Kona lineup to get the standard 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine paired to an IVT transmission as well, in both front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, depending on how you equip it. And this puts out about 147 horsepower. So there is a little bit of a performance and engine output differential between these two, just how the manufacturers have packaged these trim levels. But again, they do compare in terms of the overall price point. So a little bit more performance in the Subaru side of things, but a little bit more features and better technology, I would say, over there in the Kona SEL Convenience. Now anyways, starting at the exterior for both of these two models, you will find very similar lighting setups, although you will get the steering responsive LED headlights over here on the Subaru versus that of the regular LED projectors on the Kona. So LED low and high beam projectors, steering responsive on the Subaru. You do have the LED fog lights down below. And then over here on the Kona, you do get the LED projector headlights, both low and high beam, LED daytime running lights, and incandescent turn signals just below the LED headlamp assembly over there. If that makes sense, design language is always a subjective matter, but certainly totally different takes on the subcompact SUV from either of these two manufacturers. Now coming down the side of the vehicle, there are going to be some more key differences there in terms of the body cladding. You can see it is a fairly minimal body cladding over here on the Subaru. I like this kind of open aero vent design. It is going to be textured. Over here on the Kona, you do get the more smoothened matte black plastic. There is a nicer, slightly gray metallic trim found on the top limited trim, which I personally like on the Kona lineup best, but this is kind of what most Konas out there will offer. Body color mirror caps with LED turn signal integration. They are going to be heated and do have blind spot detection detection on the Kona, where you get the gloss black with LED turn signals over here on the Subaru. They are going to be heated as well, and there is going to be blind spot detection on the inside of the mirror, kind of on the edge of the assembly right there. You have standard touch type proximity entry on both front door handles for the Crosstrek Sport in specific, so no digital key to my knowledge. Sport badging on the door itself. And then over here on the convenience package, this does introduce the Hyundai digital key functionality. This is the 2.0 version, which supports iOS as well as Android compatible devices, and does also include the touch type standard proximity entry if you do not want to use the digital key functionality. So more features in terms of the proximity entry, if you will. And then quickly touching on the wheel and tire setup between each of these two models, it is going to be an 18-inch wheel diameter on both of these two. This is going to be the standard SEL and SEL Convenience on the Kona, and I believe this is also going to be shared with another trim level in the Crosstrek lineup, but I'm not quite sure on that off the top of my head. This is definitely a metallic gunmetal finish over there on the Subaru, where this is a machined and gloss black finish. 225, 55, 18-inch Falcon ZX ZE001A AS all-season tire over there on that one. And this is going to be a Kumho Solus TA 81 all-season here on the Kona, finished in a 215, 55, 18-inch in size. So just a tad wider on the Crosstrek, but overall going to be very, very similar tire sizes on either of these two models. Now taking a look down the side profile, you can see the Kona has a more traditional subcompact shape, very rounded towards the back of the vehicle and the vehicle as a whole. Matte black plastic trim around the windows and the B and C pillars. This one does have the roof rails up top with the accessory crossbars, which certainly give it a more outdoorsy look in my opinion. And then over here on the Crosstrek, you can see same matte black trim around the B and C pillars, traditional Subaru design language in the back of the vehicle itself. And then you do have the raised type roof rails up top, which I'm sure you can add accessory roof crossbars on those as well. If you want to do camping, hauling additional accessories, anything like that. So both these vehicles have that from the factory. And then the Subaru does also have the single power sunroof over the two front seats, or unfortunately the Kona does not. That starts on the N-line trim and higher. So if you do want a power sunroof, you do have to go up to the N-line, which gives you totally different exterior styling. And of course, the 1.6 turbo powertrain underneath the hood. Now coming out back, the Kona will have partial LED lighting. So you have the daytime running light, or excuse me, the regular running light that spans across the entire width of the rear bumper, LED tail lamps for the brake lights, and then incandescent reverse and turn signals just below the brake lights down below. Regular matte black plastic trim, no silver accents or anything like that. H-Track badge does signify that this one is going to be all-wheel drive. There's the backup camera, Kona, flat stainless steel logo and badging. There's the wiper as well as the third brake light up top. And then coming over here to the Crosstrek, this is going to have mostly incandescent lighting. I don't think there actually is any LED lighting at the back of this vehicle. So you have the regular halogen brake lights, turn signals, and reverse lights all in that upper housing with the nice gloss black trim that spans across the top portion of the tailgate. Some nice gold accents to signify that this one is, again, the sport trim level, with some fairly aggressive diffuser fins at the very bottom of the rear bumper. There's going to be the rear backup camera, Subaru logo, wiper, and third brake light up top. So overall, I guess comes down to personal preference. I kind of like the way the Subaru looks just a little bit better. Not sure about those gold accents on the sport trim, but if you don't like those, there are some other trims that you can choose from that don't get those in the Crosstrek lineup. And I really do like the Kona N-line trim in specific that gets a lot of the nice body color cladding at the bottom, the aggressive rear spoiler, larger wheels and tires, everything like that. But overall, subjective opinion. Let me know down in the comment section below which one you think looks a little better, which one you would personally drive on a daily basis. So now that you guys know a little bit more about the exteriors, let's go ahead and move on to the interior, starting here with the Crosstrek Sport, which I've been driving for the last week. Now the Sport trim level in specific, as we know, gets a lot of the yellow accent stitchings on the door, the seating surfaces, and the steering wheel. It's a mix of cloth, hard plastics, faux carbon fiber, and genuine leather here on the leather wrapped steering wheel. But when you look up at the materials throughout the interior, it's certainly a interesting use of materials, and one I actually prefer in comparison between each of these two vehicles. I think, the cloth seats are fairly comfortable. They are going to be heated in the case of this particular vehicle. The leatherette materials on the door panels and the center armrest isn't the greatest, highest quality, but it's certainly not a bad material. And the leather wrapped steering wheel certainly isn't the softest either, but it does feel very very good in the hand and is a very good overall shape and thickness. Now, when you take a look at the cockpit and the overall technology, there's a lot of physical buttons until you get to the infotainment system, which I will touch on in a second. So the door window controls, everything like that are very nice. The steering wheel controls are very tactile, have a good feel to them in the hand. You do have the fake paddle shifters on the back for the 8-speed simulate CVT type transmission. And I really don't have any major complaints about the interior layout, the use of buttons, knobs, everything like that. The center console is actually a very good height and shape to it. You do have a physical shifter for the transmission, electronic parking brake, those heated seat controls, which are a retained switch, so it basically stays on between ignition cycles, which I really do like some of those physical implementations. USB-C and A ports, auxiliary input, which is actually getting hard to find in new vehicles these days, as well as a wireless charging pad just below the infotainment screen. Now, one aspect I like in terms of the technology is the gauge cluster. This is a mix of physical dials as well as a small, roughly 4-inch screen in the middle that is controlled here on the steering wheel. And really the small screen in the gauge cluster is not my complaint when it comes to the technology. It is, however, when it comes to the infotainment system. So like I mentioned, this is the larger vertical screen they get in newer Subaru models. I believe it's just over 11-inch in size. It does have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay capability. It has NFC. All of your climate controls and everything like that is controlled via the infotainment system. And overall, you guys know if you watch my dedicated likes and dislikes on the Crosstrek, this infotainment system is by far the worst aspect about the Crosstrek. Overall, it's slow, laggy, takes forever to boot up upon initial startup. The wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay give it fits in the processing times and everything like that. It's really just not a good system. It has fairly small touch points for the actual apps and buttons when you're driving down the road. It's actually hard to select certain items when you're using the infotainment system and kind of juggling driving down the road, paying attention and trying to use the lower section of the infotainment system. But also the UI itself is not that great. The tiles themselves are fairly big, but when you're tapping on them, the processing time and response time really is not that good. So although it is fairly feature packed and has most items you would expect in a new vehicle these days, the infotainment system inside the Crosstrek really isn't that great. The one inside the Kona, the SEL Convenience and higher, certainly is a huge step up and is miles better in my opinion. So overall, has all of the driver assistance technologies, works fairly well, is not class leading the Subaru EyeSight system in general. Has the power sunroof, which is a plus if you're looking for a vehicle in the low $30,000 price range. With a sunroof, you do have to get the N-Line to get that in the Kona. But yeah, the interior as a whole, it seems very well put together. The vehicle drives extremely well from a ride and handling standpoint. Acceleration's good with the larger 2.5 liter boxer motor. CVT is not my ideal transmission, but both these vehicles do have a CVT type of transmission, so they're similar in that regard. Sound system is not good in either of these vehicles. I might say it's actually slightly worse inside of the Crosstrek versus that of the Kona. But yeah, technology is really not that different. But I would say the Crosstrek drives, rides, does all the vehicle type of stuff a little bit better than the Kona, but the technology, infotainment system, probably the sound system, and some of that aspect is much better over there in the Hyundai. So stepping into the rear seat of the Crosstrek behind my driving position for the last week. As you can see, ingress and egress really isn't all that bad, even given the lowish roof line of the rear seat. I have, 6 or 7 inches behind my rough driving position, tons of footroom down below, and really the seat comfort is not that bad for a vehicle of this size and segment. Materials do partially fall through from the front, so you have a nice soft touch padded armrest. Unfortunately, the cloth material does not continue on. A little bit of door storage. You have one USB-A and one USB-C charge port. No AC vents here in the back, which is a huge bummer in my opinion. You have one mat pocket on the passenger side of the vehicle, and you do get a center armrest, however, with 2 additional cup holders, which even makes the comfort aspect even better. So Yeah, really overall, I love the available room inside the Crosstrek for a vehicle of this size, and adds to the positive nature I have just about the interior materials and the overall driving dynamics. Now moving on to the interior of the all-new Hyundai Kona, well, immediately going to have a totally different feel behind the wheel of this vehicle versus that of the Crosstrek. Now, touching on some of the interior material bits really quickly, the door panels are not nearly as good as the Crosstrek. They're entirely one color, no matter if you get the gray or the black interior, with only a small portion of soft touch for the armrest, and really the rest of it is going to be that hard touch material, which sure might be durable over the life of the vehicle, but certainly doesn't have the aesthetic appeal, in my opinion, versus that of other competitors in the segment. Same power window mirror lock situation as the Crosstrek, with both two front windows being fully automatic. You have the leather wrapped steering wheel that is going to be a little bit thinner than that of the Crosstrek, but has a slightly nicer feel in terms of its material. You have all of the driver assistance technology and audio multimedia here, laid out a little bit cleaner and simpler in my opinion versus that of the Crosstrek, so I like Hyundai's implementation of that. Still have paddle shifters for the IVT transmission on the backside. Automatic headlights, auto high beam assist, all that is going to be very, very similar between either of these two. Now, in terms of the interior technology, you're going to have dual 12.3-inch screens in the Kona under kind of one panoramic display, if you will. So certainly this is going to be a totally different experience with the fully digital instrument cluster versus that of the partially analog over there. And then when it comes to the infotainment system, although the screen real estate and the screen size isn't all that different, the horizontal nature and the UI makes the Kona way easier to use on a day-to-day basis, and the processing power and the speed of it is way more responsive as well. So still has wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, even with the built-in navigation, which Hyundai has just rolled out for 2024. Has Blue Link Plus, which is free app integration for the lifetime of the first owner, which is something the Subaru does not offer over there. All physical buttons and controls for the climate controls just below the infotainment system. Much better to use on a daily basis, in my opinion, especially considering the screen speed over there in the Subaru. Wireless charging pad, heated front seats. This does have the all-wheel drive with drive mode select. So similar, aspects in that regard with the multi-link independent suspension for all-wheel drive models. Materials throughout the cabin and the seats, maybe aren't quite as soft or plush, mainly when it comes to the seating materials, but touch points aren't too bad in the Kona. You do have the more lower and open center console design, given this vehicle is based around an EV architecture first. So I would say the console feels a little bit more open and spacious inside of the interior here for the front seats. No power sunroof, like I mentioned, have to get an N-line or higher for that. And you don't have an auto-dimming interior rearview mirror either. But you do have overhead LED lighting, which is something the Subaru does not have. So plus in the Kona for that LED overhead lighting here in this trim level. So stepping into the back seat of the Kona, well, immediately I'll say the door opening feels bigger and the roofline feels like it's a little bit taller. Now, as I mentioned in the front seat, door materials unfortunately do fall through from the front, which means entirely mundane and hard plastics on the door, which is actually not the case for the Subaru's rear doors, as you do get a soft touch armrest over there. Seats, of course, are going to be the same kind of stiffer cloth material as the front seats, but as you can see, I have at least, if not just a little bit more rear seat room behind my rough driving position as that of the Crosstrek. So both of these vehicles are going to be very, very spacious in terms of its rear seat, and the Kona gains a retracting or reclinable second row seat, which is something that you do not get over there in the Crosstrek. So there's going to be two positions to recline the second row of the Kona, and I would say that's easily makes it slightly more comfortable for maybe a little bit of a longer road trip versus that vehicle over there. Now, with the Kona SEL trim level and higher, you do get rear second row AC vents, again not found over there in the Crosstrek, along with two USB-C charging ports and a little bit of additional storage. No mat pockets on either front seat, a little bit of a bizarre choice once again from Hyundai, but you do get the overhead LED lighting, which should give you a little bit more output when the vehicle is obviously in a darker situation at nighttime. So still have the center armrest with two integrated cup holders. No real difference in that regard. But yeah, I do like the rear second row recline as well as the AC vents, just in terms of its feature amenity advantages over that of the Crosstrek, but a little bit unfortunate that you do have hard touch armrests here on the door panels, but luckily you do still have the center console armrest. And then quickly touching on the passenger front seat before we get into the cargo area, you do get a 6-way manual adjustment passenger seat on the SEL trim level and higher. So that does include height adjustment over here on the Kona, where you do have a standard 4-way manual seat on the Crosstrek. So there is no height adjustment on this particular trim of the Crosstrek, unfortunately. So if you're looking for a height adjustable passenger seat, the Kona is certainly going to be the way to go at this price point. Now, when it comes to the rear cargo capacity for either of these two models, I actually don't know which one technically and officially has the larger cargo area behind the second row seats and with the second row seats folded down, but I can tell you that the slope here on the Crosstrek and the overall rear end of the vehicle seems just a little bit smaller than that of the Kona. But opening up each of the two hatches and taking a look visually side by side, neither one of these at this price point does have a power liftgate, although you can get a power liftgate as standard on the Kona Limited for about $35,000. I don't believe that's actually available on any trim level of the Crosstrek. But just standing back and looking at the two cargo areas, well, immediately you have the retractable cargo area shade over here on the Crosstrek. So this is, you know, the type where you pull back and lock it into place in a fairly small area versus that of the hard type over here on the Kona. You have an LED light on the left side over here on this particular vehicle, where you do have an incandescent light on the Crosstrek. So probably a little bit more output at night on this particular vehicle. And the overall load floor is a little bit lower over here on the Kona versus that of the Crosstrek. So if you're looking to get stuff up to this lip, this is going to be a little bit of a lower dimension versus that of the Crosstrek, which certainly has a larger rear bumper as a whole and has to lip up and over into the actual floor itself versus, you know, having a one level load floor in that regard. You do have a temporary spare tire underneath the floor, as well as a little bit of additional cargo area in that of the Kona. We're over here in the Crosstrek, you do have the all-weather liners in this particular vehicle, and once again there is going to be the temporary spare tire. It looks like actually with possibly an alloy wheel on it, which is actually interesting for additional weight savings, and not really any additional underfloor storage in this vehicle, although there are going to be cubbies on the left and right side for either of these two vehicles for smaller groceries with the baggage hooks and stuff like that. So if I had to take a guess, let's go ahead and take the Crosstrek's liner out real quick and place it over here in the Kona just to see how well it fits in between the wheel wells. And holy cow, that fits extremely similar to that of the Crosstrek over there. So might actually be just a tad deeper in the Kona, but not exactly sure about the roof rake or anything like that, but holy cow, that nearly fits perfectly in the back of the Kona. So I guess the actual floor dimensions are extremely similar between either of these two vehicles. It's just going to come down to that vertical dimension and whether or not you like the soft type retractable cargo cover that this one has, or the hard type right here, which actually can stow just behind the second row seats on those little provisions right there. So you can keep this out of the way, but still inside the vehicle if you wish. So yeah, that's a look here at the car capacity. Of course, I'll have the information up on the screen so you guys know actually, technically, you know, officially, which one is going to be the larger of the two, both hopefully with the second row seats up as well as the second row seats folded down. But now with all that information in mind, I guess it's time to get into my driving impressions and overall thoughts on maybe which one I would pick if I were in the market for a low $30,000 subcompact SUV. Now, anyways, getting into the driving impressions and driving dynamics for either of these two models. Well, number one, you can tell the additional power of the 2.5 liter boxer engine in the Crosstrek. I think the ride and handling is going to be better in that vehicle. It has very good, you know, dynamics, handling, despite the, you know, relatively high ride height of a vehicle in this segment in general. I really like the way the Subaru drives as a whole. The two different drive modes change quite a bit, and the 8-speed simulated gear shifts in the Subaru, as well as over here in the Hyundai, you know, really are a personal preference type of thing. I don't think they change the overall acceleration and performance all that much, but does allow the driver to kind of customize and tailor it to their needs. So I think the driving aspects of the Subaru are going to be a highlight, and one of the things that it does a little bit better than that of the Kona. Now, when it comes to the Kona, the driving dynamics of this new generation are much better than that of the previous generation. The all-wheel drive with the multi-link independent rear suspension, that is standard on the Subaru, comes with the all-wheel drive Konas, is something that I would personally choose if I was shopping for a Kona. I think the torsion beam, fixed independent, semi-independent rear suspension is fine. It's an improvement again over the last generation, but I think the multi-link independent with the all-wheel drive is certainly the way to go in this vehicle. Acceleration with the standard 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, again, adequate, not class leading by any means, but the 1.6-liter turbo is certainly going to be way more competitive to that of this engine in this particular vehicle. So again, you can compare those if you would wish, but the 1.6 turbo comes with the 8-speed torque converted automatic transmission, which again might be a reason why you want the Kona with a larger engine versus that of the CVT. Now, when it comes to some of the technology inside of either of these two vehicles, as I mentioned earlier on this video, the Subaru is probably one of the worst infotainment systems I've used inside of a newer vehicle that I've had the opportunity to test and review. It's slow, it's laggy, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay works, but it takes about 45 to 60 seconds to actually fully integrate and actually, start working inside the vehicle upon starting it for the very first time on a drive. So, there's been times where I was, leaving my street with the Subaru, the phone was already trying to connect, and I got, past the end of my street and turning it onto the regular roadway before the system actually became fully responsive and actually started working inside of that vehicle. Now, here with Hyundai's latest CCNC systems, they've beefed up the technology. I think the overall UI is much easier to use inside of Hyundai's newer systems. There's probably a little bit more customization when it comes to the vehicle itself, and the wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is just quicker to connect and utilize on a daily basis. So Hyundai's infotainment system inside the Kona is way better than that of Subaru's system. I really think that is the biggest drawback to that of the Crosstrek and probably some other Subaru models as well, with the larger infotainment system on their latest UI. Driver assistance technology, again, I think the Kona does that quite well, especially when you use the highway drive assist or get a vehicle with the highway drive assist. But even with the standard system from Hyundai with the lane follow assist, it's still a very robust system, works extremely well. And this one, SEL Convenience with the highway drive assist, I think is just overall easier to use. Performs better out in real world conditions, doesn't lose the lane, doesn't bounce between the lane markings when you're using the lane centering functionality. So I would give the driver assistance technology over here to Hyundai. I think Subaru's EyeSight is fine. It's kind of middle of the road in my opinion for driver assistance technologies out there. I would say it might be slightly better than Ford's system or kind of on the same level, where I do have occasional instances where I think the system should be working a little bit better than it actually does, but it does function. It's not a bad system as a whole. I just prefer Hyundai's with their highway drive assist in some of their latest generation vehicles. So, I think that's pretty much gonna cover it. Fuel economy, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I'm sure they're not entirely different between either of these vehicles. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Subaru is just a little bit better than that of the Kona, especially with the all-wheel drive Konas. Features inside the vehicle, gonna be a little bit better in the Kona with the reclining rear seats, the rear AC vents, Hyundai digital key for the front door handles, Blue Link Plus integration for the first owner, LED overhead lighting. I think just the feature set and the overall value proposition is going to be better here inside the Kona in this trim level versus that of the Crosstrek Sport as seen behind me. Certainly do like a couple aspects of the Crosstrek. I think the interior is very good, seems well put together. The material usage throughout the cabin, the seats themselves, much better, higher quality materials over there. Personally, I would choose these two for slightly different reasons. If you really prioritize how the vehicle drives and don't care at all about the infotainment system, the sound system, the radio, stuff like that, then the Subaru might be the best pick, but again, comes with less features and less warranty. Now, if you really care about, the features, warranty, bang for the buck value, then the Kona is probably going to be the one you want to go for. And the space inside this vehicle is quite good. But I think both these vehicles are going to be a solid offering if you guys are in the market for a subcompact SUV, again, just over that $30,000 price point. There are additional trim levels in both these two. If you want the smaller engine, don't need the additional power, you can get a cheaper Crosstrek with a few less features. And again, you can get a cheaper Kona starting in the mid $20,000 price point for an SE front wheel drive that still comes in with a lot of bang for the buck. I think that's pretty much going to do it here for this video and my general thoughts and consensus between the 2024 Hyundai Kona SEL Convenience and that of the Subaru Crosstrek Sport. Now, before we end out this video, I want to give a huge thanks to Subaru for sending out the Crosstrek Sport once again. Make sure you guys check out my dedicated likes and dislikes video that I did on the blue one just a couple months ago here on the channel. I do have several videos on that particular vehicle, so make sure you guys check that one out if you want to know a little bit more about the Crosstrek in general. Let me know which one you would choose down in the comment section below if you're shopping for a subcompact SUV in the low $30,000 price point, and why. I'm genuinely curious about which one you think is a better vehicle as a whole, or which one you would choose if you were actually spending your own money. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and or found it helpful, make sure to hit that like button below. It greatly helps out the channel's videos. Subscribe if you haven't already, and consider becoming a channel member to support these videos and the channel even further. And of course, there's the Amazon affiliate link down in the description below, which is a no-cost option to help support us even a little bit further. So let me know all that down in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate continued support and hope to see you guys in the next one.